The sound of alarms echoed inside the mining station's main corridor. Daniel Cross pulled himself out from under a broken generator, his face smeared with grease and his clothes carrying the smell of burnt metal. He was the chief engineer on this lonely outpost near the edge of human space. His job was simple: keep the old machines alive, dig up resources, and make sure the corporate bosses got their shipment on time. Life on the station was quiet most days. He repaired drills, checked fuel cells, and argued with the automatic systems that always seemed to break at the wrong moment. But today, something different happened. A signal arrived, not the usual coded message from Earth, but a distress call. Daniel wiped his hands on his shirt and leaned over the control panel. The signal repeated in a steady rhythm, full of strange tones and words he could not understand. The computer worked to translate but struggled with the unknown language. Still, one thing was clear. It was a call for help. He stared at the screen for a long moment. Out here, help rarely came. Ships that got in trouble usually vanished into silence. But something about the voice in the message, even distorted, felt alive. It carried urgency, like someone who refused to give up. Daniel contacted the small crew of the station, but most were asleep. The others were too far from the command deck to react quickly. He made a decision. He would answer the call himself. Minutes later, his small repair shuttle left the mining dock. The black of space stretched endless around him, with stars scattered like dust across the dark sea. Ahead, the signal grew stronger. Soon, he saw it. A ship unlike anything he had ever seen. It was massive, shaped almost like a living creature, with wings folded inward and glowing lines running along its surface. Parts of it flickered with failing energy. Panels were broken and clouds of frozen gas escaped from cracks in the hull. "Not human," Daniel whispered. He felt both fear and wonder. Docking was risky, but the ship's systems allowed him to approach. His shuttle locked onto an airlock, and with a hiss the doors connected. Daniel grabbed his toolkit, strapped on his helmet, and stepped into the unknown. Inside, the air was heavy and warm, filled with a scent that reminded him of flowers mixed with metal. The walls curved gently, like the inside of a shell, glowing with dim blue light. He moved carefully, guided by the signal on his wrist. The path led him to a large chamber. At its center stood a tall figure, wrapped in flowing silver robes with a crown-like crest above her head. Her skin shimmered like polished stone, and her eyes glowed faintly with a mix of gold and violet. Even in her weakened state, she stood, proud, her presence commanding the space around her. Daniel stopped in shock. He had never seen anything like her. The figure spoke in her language, words strong but strained. The translator on his wrist struggled, stuttering through sounds until it formed something close to English. "You are human," the voice finally said. "You came." Daniel swallowed, unsure how to respond. "Yes, I got your signal. Your ship looks badly damaged. I can help with repairs." The alien studied him carefully, her gaze sharp, almost piercing. Then she gave a small nod. "I am Lysera," she said, "Queen of the Sarathan. My vessel is failing. Without repairs, we will not live, Queen." The word made Daniel blink. He was standing before a ruler, not just a survivor. "I'm Daniel Cross," he replied, his voice steady despite the racing of his heart. "Engineer, tell me what's broken, and I'll see what I can do." Lysera stepped aside, showing him a great machine at the far end of the chamber. It pulsed weakly with light, sparks shooting from damaged coils. Pipes leaked streams of glowing liquid onto the floor. "This is our core," she explained. "It gives life to the vessel. It is wounded. My people tried to heal it, but they failed." Daniel set his toolkit down and examined the machine. To his surprise, it reminded him of old fusion drives from Earth. The shapes were different, more organic, but the principles were familiar. He smiled faintly. For once, his years of fixing outdated equipment might save more than just a mining station. He began working, his hands moving with practiced skill. He replaced burned wires with makeshift connections, sealed leaking pipes with compound, and reset damaged circuits. All the while, Lysera watched him, her eyes following every move. You are not afraid, she said suddenly. Daniel gave a small laugh. Afraid? Of course I am. I'm standing on an alien ship next to an alien queen, but if I think too much about fear, nothing gets fixed. Her expression softened, almost like a smile. Strange human, you speak like no one I have known. Hours passed as he worked. The room grew hot, the glow of the failing core pressing against him. Sweat dripped down his face and his arms ached from the effort, yet he kept going, driven by determination. At last, with a final adjustment, the machine roared to life. The lights brightened, the leaks sealed, and the pulsing energy steadied into rhythm. Lysera stepped forward, her robes sweeping across the floor. She touched the machine gently as if it were alive. Then she turned to Daniel, her gaze filled with both relief and respect. You have saved us, she said. Daniel shrugged, trying to hide his exhaustion. Just doing my job. Fixing broken things is what I do. But Lysera shook her head. No. You have done more. You answered a call from one unknown to you. You entered danger without promise of reward. Among my people, such action is rare. You have given hope where there was none. Daniel felt awkward under her words. He was just an engineer, not a hero. Still, there was something in her voice that made his chest tighten, a mix of dignity and gratitude he had never heard before. Before he could answer, a low hum spread through the ship as systems began to recover. The crew of the vessel, strange beings of different shapes, entered the chamber. They looked to their queen, then to Daniel, whispering among themselves. Lysera raised her hand, silencing them. She pointed to Daniel. This human has restored our core, she declared. Remember his face. His skill has kept your queen alive. Daniel shifted uncomfortably as dozens of alien eyes turned toward him. The queen stepped closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. I will ask more of you, Daniel Cross. My vessel is not yet healed. Will you stay? Daniel looked at the damaged corridors around them, then back at her. Part of him wanted to return to the safety of his station, but another part, stronger, refused to leave when she, still needed him. I'll stay, he said finally, but you'll have to show me how things work here. I'm only human after all. For the first time, Lysera's stern expression broke into a true smile. It was brief, but it carried warmth that lit the chamber brighter than the repaired core. Then you are welcome among us, she said. And with that, Daniel Cross, an ordinary engineer from a forgotten mining station, became part of something far greater than he ever imagined. The days that followed Daniel's first repair were anything but quiet. The alien ship, though stable for now, still carried many wounds. Broken corridors, leaking pipes, flickering lights. Each part seemed to need his hands. For Daniel, it was like walking inside a giant machine that begged to be saved piece by piece. For the alien crew, it was strange to watch a human crawl through vents and squeeze into narrow spaces with only a toolkit and courage. Lysera, the queen, often came to watch him work. She moved with dignity, her silver robes glimmering faintly. In the light, her crown-like crest always marking her as something greater than the rest. Yet Daniel noticed something unusual. Even though she was their queen, she did not sit back and command from a throne. She watched, listened, and sometimes even asked questions. You do not fear dirt, she said one time as Daniel emerged from a maintenance tunnel, covered in dust and grease. Daniel gave a tired grin. Machines don't care if I wear a crown or a uniform. They care if I fix them. Lysera tilted her head, studying him with those glowing violet gold eyes. Strange. Among my people, few of noble blood would dare touch broken steel. Well, I'm not noble, Daniel answered with a shrug, just practical. The translator on his wrist worked hard, turning her alien words into English and his English into her language. Yet sometimes, the machine slipped. One day, when Lysera tried to ask if his repairs would last, the device translated her words as, "Do you promise to hold me forever?" Daniel nearly dropped his tool. What? Lysera repeated herself, frowning at the machine. This time, It came out correctly. Do you promise your work will last? Daniel laughed nervously. Right. Yes. The repair will hold. At least, until I check it again. The Queen raised an eyebrow, confused by his sudden nervousness, but let it pass. These mistranslations became a common source of tension and humor. Once Daniel tried to say, I'll tighten this bolt. Instead, the translator told her, I will bind your heart. Lizera stared in silence for a long time before quietly responding, That is a heavy promise. Daniel groaned and slapped the device. This thing is broken, I swear. Despite the mistakes, communication slowly grew easier. Daniel learned simple words of her language, and Lysera grew used to his Earth terms. The crew, however, was less forgiving. Many of them whispered doubts. Some called him the intruder. Others bowed awkwardly, unsure how to treat the human who walked beside their queen. One evening, after Daniel had repaired part of the energy grid, Lysera invited him to her private chamber. It was not a throne room, but a simple space filled with glowing crystals and a large star map at the center. You have done much already, she said, but still your ways confuse me. Daniel sat carefully, feeling awkward in such a grand space. I could say the same. Your ship's design is beautiful but complicated. On Earth we build things strong but simple. You build them elegant but fragile. Her lips curved faintly. Fragile? You call the Sarathan fragile? Daniel raised his hands quickly. Not you. Just the machines. They need more care than human machines. Lysera considered his words, and then nodded. Perhaps. Our people value grace. Yours value endurance. The translator hesitated again, making her words come out as, Our people value grace. Yours value husbands. Daniel blinked. Wait, what did you just say? Lysera repeated herself slowly. Grace, endurance. Did I say something wrong? Daniel coughed into his hand. No, it's fine. Just another mistake. But the word hung in the air, heavy and strange. Later, while checking the coolant systems, Lysera came to him again. She stood close, watching his steady hands. Finally, she spoke softly. In my language, Mina, she said, there is a word, Caloran. It means more than partner. It means one who stands beside you in battle, one who shares burdens, one who cannot be replaced. Daniel tightened the last bolt and wiped his forehead. Sounds important? It is. And when I asked the translator to tell me your word for Caloran, it gave me husband. Daniel froze. Lysera continued without hesitation. So I used it. I called you husband because that is what the machine told me. Is this word wrong? Daniel's mouth opened, but no sound came out. His heart hammered in his chest. He was just a repairman. He had never imagined being called something like that, especially not by an alien queen. It's not wrong, he managed finally. But it means more than you think. On Earth, husband means marriage, family, a promise between two people. Lysera studied him closely, her eyes glowing with a deep light. Ah, then it is heavier than I thought. Daniel scratched the back of his neck. Yeah, very heavy. For a moment, silence filled the room. Daniel expected her to correct herself, to say it was just a mistake, but instead she straightened, her voice calm and certain. Then let it be heavy, she said. You have already stood beside me in danger. You carry burdens not your own. If this word is the closest to Calaran, then it is not wrong. Daniel stared at her, stunned. He wanted to argue, to explain that words like husband were too big for him, too final. But the way she said it, like a fact carved in stone, stopped him. The alien crew did not take the news lightly. When they heard their queen refer to the human as husband, whispers spread through the halls. Some looked at Daniel with curiosity, others with jealousy or doubt. He could feel their eyes on him wherever he walked. At first, he tried to laugh it off. Lost in translation, he told one of the alien engineers who glared at him. Big mistake, nothing serious. But when Lysera herself spoke the word openly in front of her officers, the meaning shifted. What started as a mistranslation became a declaration. One officer stepped forward, clearly unsettled. My queen, to call him husband is to give him standing among us. He is not Sarathan. Lysera's answer was firm. He is my Caloran. If your hearts doubt, then watch his hands. They heal what yours could not. Daniel stood awkwardly beside her, wishing he could disappear into the floor. But at the same time, a strange warmth filled him. Nobody had ever defended him like that before. Later, when they were alone, he finally spoke. You know this is going to cause trouble, right? Lysera turned to him, her expression unreadable. Perhaps, but truth often causes trouble. Do you regret it? Daniel hesitated, thinking about his quiet life back on the mining station. Safe, predictable, unimportant. Then he thought about the way she looked at him, like he mattered, like his skills were more than just tools. No, he said finally. I don't regret it, but I'm not sure I understand it yet. Her voice softened. Then we will learn together. The words settled deep in his mind. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. The bond between him and the alien queen was no longer just about repairs. It was about trust. And trust, he realized, was harder to fix than any broken machine. The alien vessel sailed slowly through the void, its damaged wings still carrying scars of battle. Inside, Daniel Cross worked tirelessly with the Sarathan engineers. He crawled into ducts, patched cracks, and wired circuits, his hands always covered in grease. What he lacked in elegance he replaced with creativity, using scraps and strange combinations of Earth-style fixes that no Sarathan would have dared to attempt. The crew watched him closely, some with awe, some with doubt. Whispers always followed him through the halls. The Queen's husband, they called him now. What had begun as a mistranslation was now a title many repeated, though not all with respect. Daniel felt the weight of those eyes. He had never asked for honor or titles. Back on the mining station, he was just the guy who could keep a machine alive with tape and stubbornness. But here, every small act seemed to grow into something greater. Every bolt he turned, every pipe he sealed became part of a larger story, one he had never agreed to play a role in. One day, while he was fixing a damaged air filter, 2 Sarathan guards approached him. Their tall forms blocked the corridor, their silver armor shining under the lights. You, one said in a deep voice. Human. Why do you wear the name Husband of the Queen? Daniel straightened, wiping sweat from his forehead. I don't wear it. The translator chose it. She said it. The guard's eyes narrowed. That word is not light. Among us it means strength shared, destiny joined. You are not Sarathan. You cannot understand. Daniel sighed, gripping his wrench. Maybe I don't understand, but I didn't ask for it. I just fix what's broken. The guards looked at each other, clearly unsatisfied, but they stepped aside. As they walked away, Daniel felt frustration rise in his chest. He had never been judged this much in his entire life. Later, in the Queen's chamber, he finally spoke, his mind. Lysera stood near the glowing star map, her crown-like crest glowing faintly. She turned as he entered, sensing his unease. Something troubles you, she said. Daniel crossed his arms. Your people don't accept me, they don't trust me. And honestly, I can't blame them. I'm human, I don't belong here. Lysera's gaze softened, but her voice carried the same calm strength. They will learn. They doubt what they do not know. That is not your burden to carry. Maybe not, Daniel muttered, but it feels like it is. Everywhere I go, they whisper. They think I took some place I didn't earn. Lysera stepped closer, her eyes glowing. You earned it when you saved our lives. You earned it when you stood where others would have fled. Do not forget that. Daniel met her gaze, and for a moment the doubts faded. Still, the whispers didn't stop. And soon a greater test arrived. Weeks after the first repairs, danger found them again. A pirate fleet, dark ships with jagged shapes, appeared on their scanners. These raiders hunted damaged vessels at the edges of space. They saw the Queen's ship as prey. The alarm rang through the halls. Sarathan officers rushed to their stations. Daniel followed Lizra to the command deck where a giant viewing window showed the enemy ships moving closer. "They will strike soon," an officer warned. Lizra's voice was calm but sharp. "Prepare defenses." Daniel studied the readings. His eyes widened. "Your engines aren't ready for battle. They'll push too hard and collapse. You can't outrun them." The officer looked at him with irritation. "Human, this is no place for you." But Lysra raised her hand. "Speak, Daniel." He pointed at the maps. "If we can't outrun them, we outsmart them. Pirates expect you to flee, so don't. Turn the ship, make it look broken, weaker than it is. Then when they close in, release the spare coolant tanks. They'll freeze instantly, shattering into sharp fragments, like a minefield." The Sarathan officers exchanged doubtful looks. "That is reckless," one said. Lysra considered. Then, with a slow nod, she said, "Do it." The crew obeyed reluctantly. The ship slowed, turning its wings inward as if crippled. The pirates rushed closer, hungry for an easy prize. At the right moment, Daniel triggered the release. Dozens of coolant tanks spun into the void, bursting into glittering clouds of ice shards. The pirates fired, but their shots struck the frozen fragments. Explosions echoed across the void, damaging their own ships. Confused and off balance, they pulled back. The Queen's vessel seized the moment, unleashing a blast from its main cannon. One pirate ship exploded in fire, forcing the rest to retreat. Cheers erupted across the command deck. Officers shouted victory, their voices filled with relief. Lysra turned to Daniel, her gaze proud. "Your idea saved us." But not everyone was pleased. One officer stepped forward, his tone sharp. "My queen, with respect, you risk too much." On the word of this outsider. Husband or not, he does not know our ways. Lysra's eyes turned cold. "He knows survival. Do you?" The officer lowered his head, silenced. Daniel stood quietly, unsure what to say. Part of him wanted to smile, to accept the pride swelling in his chest. Another part whispered doubt. He had crossed a line, giving orders to an alien fleet. Back on the station, he was just an engineer. How had he become this? Later that night, Daniel walked alone through the quiet halls. He stopped by a window, staring out at the endless stars. For the first time, he wondered if he was in over his head. Lysra found him there. Her steps were silent, her presence calm but strong. "You doubt again?" she said softly. Daniel chuckled bitterly. "Is it that obvious?" "You carry it on your face," she said. "But doubt is not weakness. It means you see the weight of your choices." He looked at her. "I'm not a leader. I'm not a soldier. I'm just a guy who fixes things." Lysra stepped closer, her gaze never leaving his. "You fix more than machines, Daniel. You fix hope. My people see it, even if they do not speak it. That is why they whisper. They fear change. But fear does not make you unworthy." Her words settled deep in him, easing the storm in his chest. He gave a small smile. "You really think I'm more than just a repairman?" She answered without hesitation. "I know it." For a long moment, they stood in silence, stars reflecting in the window before them. Daniel realized something then. Maybe he wasn't ready for the title she had given him. Maybe he would never be ready. But if he could stand by her, if he could keep fixing what was broken, machines, ships, maybe even trust, then maybe the word husband wasn't such a mistake after all. The next day, the crew moved with new energy. Some still whispered doubts, but others now looked at him with respect. The pirate threat had proven something no translation could. Still, Daniel knew this was only the beginning. Trust came slowly, and culture clashed like steel on steel. But for the first time, he felt the path forward. He was no longer just a visitor, no longer just a repairman. He was part of their story, And that story was far from over. The Queen's vessel drifted through deep space, carrying scars of the last battle but also carrying something new: hope. Daniel Cross walked the halls each day, working side by side with Sarathan engineers. Where they saw brokenness, he saw possibilities. Where they followed strict manuals, he used creativity. His ideas were strange, even risky, but more often than not, they worked. Yet not everyone celebrated his presence. Among the crew, whispers still spread. Some accepted him. As the Queen's husband, others rejected the idea completely. In the Sarathan Empire, such a bond was more than words. To be called husband of the Queen was to stand as her chosen, her equal in some way. For Daniel, it was just a mistake in translation. But for the Sarathan, it meant power. And power always drew envy. One officer in particular, Commander Veyran, watched Daniel with cold eyes. Veyran had served Lysera for years, loyal and proud. He could not accept that an off-world human, with dirty hands and simple tools, now stood so close to the Queen. One morning, Daniel worked in the engine chamber, tightening a new brace he had installed to support the core. Lysera stood nearby, her presence calm, watching him as she often did. "You humans," she said, "you bend metal in ways we never think of. You use scraps as if they were jewels." Daniel chuckled. "On Earth, we don't always have new parts. We make do with what we've got. Guess that habit followed me here." Before Lysera could answer, the heavy doors opened. Commander Veyran entered, his armor polished and his stride sharp. His gaze swept the chamber, landing on Daniel. "My Queen," Veyran said formally. "I must speak." Lysera gave a small nod. "Speak, Veyran." He looked at Daniel with open disdain. "This human walks our halls as if he is Sarathan. He speaks ideas in our councils. He is given a name that is not his. Husband of the Queen. Do you not see the insult to your throne?" The chamber grew silent. The engineers froze, tools in hand. Daniel straightened, wiping his hands on a rag, his jaw tight. Lysera's voice remained calm but firm. "You question me. I question the place of this outsider," Veyran said boldly. "Among us, husband of the Queen is not a title given lightly. To speak it is to bind him to your reign. Yet he is not of us. He cannot know our ways. His presence makes rivals bold. Already whispers spread beyond this vessel." Daniel wanted to speak, but Lysera lifted her hand. "Enough. This human saved your lives when our core failed. He stood beside me when pirates came. He risked himself without promise of reward. Does that not earn respect?" Veyran's eyes narrowed. "Respect, yes. Standing beside a queen, no. If he is truly worthy, let him prove it. Not with tools, but with courage." The words hung heavy in the air. Daniel frowned. "What does that mean?" Veyran turned toward him. "A trial, in the Sarathan way. If you are to wear that name, husband, then show us you deserve it." Daniel's heart sank. He wasn't a warrior. He wasn't a politician. He was an engineer with grease under his nails. But Lysera spoke before he could refuse. "Very well," she said. "The trial will be given." The trial came sooner than Daniel expected. The Queen's fleet had been summoned to a rendezvous point near the edge of a glowing nebula. Other ships of her empire gathered there, each one a massive structure of silver and light. For Daniel, it was like stepping into a gathering of kings, but not all bowed to Lysera. Some questioned her leadership after recent battles. Some pointed at Daniel, whispering doubts. Commander Veyran used these whispers, fueling their fire. The trial was set. Daniel would face a challenge of skill and courage before the fleet. Not a duel of weapons. Lysera would not allow that. But a test of mind and heart. He would be placed aboard a small shuttle with failing systems, drifting into the dangerous edges of the nebula. His task was simple: keep the shuttle alive and return safely. Many Sarathan warriors had failed such tests before. Daniel stared at the tiny craft as preparations were made. "This is madness," he muttered. Lysera stood beside him, her face unreadable. You do not have to do this. He looked at her, searching her glowing eyes. If I don't, they'll never stop doubting you. Or me. She hesitated, then placed her hand lightly on his shoulder. Then go. But remember, Daniel, Cross, you are not alone. You carry more than human skill. You carry the trust of a queen. Those words stayed with him as he stepped into the shuttle. The trial began. The shuttle's systems flickered as it drifted into the glowing clouds of the nebula. Outside the window, lightning storms of energy flashed across the gas, shaking the hull. The engines sputtered, half dead by design. Daniel rolled up his sleeves. All right, you old wreck, let's dance. He moved quickly, patching wires, rerouting power, sealing leaks. Every spark reminded him of his mining days, fixing machines that wanted to quit. But this time, the danger was greater. If he failed, the nebula would tear the ship apart. Hours passed. His hands bled from sharp edges, his eyes burned from strain. The ship shook again and again, but he held it together piece by piece. At one point, the engines failed completely. The shuttle spun toward a storm of lightning. Daniel strapped himself in, holding a cable in one hand, and shouted at the console, "Come on, don't you quit on me now." He slammed the reset, rerouted power through a spare coil, and the engines roared back to life just before the storm swallowed them. Finally, after endless struggle, the nebula thinned. Ahead, the lights of the Sarathan fleet glimmered. The shuttle limped forward, battered but alive. Daniel leaned back, exhausted but grinning. Not bad for a human husband. When he returned, the fleet watched in silence. His shuttle docked, the doors opened, and he stepped out, covered in burns and grease. Commander Veyran's proud expression faltered. Lysera stood tall, her eyes shining with fierce pride. She raised her voice so all could hear. You doubted. You questioned. But look now. He faced the storm and returned. He carries not only my trust but the strength to endure. Let no one call him unworthy. The crew and the fleet bowed their heads. Some still held doubt, but many more now looked at Daniel with respect, true and unforced. Daniel, still catching his breath, muttered, You know, back home this would just be a bad day at work. Lysera smiled faintly. And here, it is a legend. That night, in the quiet of her chamber, Daniel finally asked, Why fight so hard for me? You could have told them the truth, that it was just a mistake in translation. Lysera's gaze was steady. Because mistake or not, the word fits. You are not Sarathan. You are not bound by our ways. But you stand beside me when others turn away. That is husband enough. Daniel felt the weight of her words settle deep inside him. For the first time, he did not argue. For the first time, he let the title rest on his shoulders. But outside, in the far reaches of the empire, rivals watched. They saw a queen and her strange human husband, and they plotted. The storm was not over, it was only beginning. The vast darkness of space stretched endlessly outside the queen's vessel, stars glittering like scattered gems. Inside, the crew moved with quiet tension. The repairs and battles had left them weary, yet the real challenge was only beginning. A massive cosmic storm, the likes of which even the Sarathan had never faced, now surged toward them. It was a churning, violet-colored mass of energy, swirling unpredictably. The storm would tear through their fleet if they did not act. Daniel Cross stood in the engine room, his hands working tirelessly to stabilize the main core. Sparks flew from overloaded circuits and the heat pressed heavy against him, yet his mind raced faster than ever. This storm, it's like nothing we've seen, one Sarathan engineer said, sweat dripping from his brow. Daniel nodded without looking up. It's not just about strength, it's about control. If we can't calm the systems and move the energy safely, we'll be torn apart. Lysera entered quietly, watching him for a moment. Her eyes glowed faintly. You do not falter, she said softly. Even now, when our fleet's survival depends on human hands and alien minds together, you do not falter. Daniel paused, wiping grease from his face. I'm scared, he admitted. But scared doesn't mean I quit. Her smile was brief, but it carried reassurance. Then we stand together. The fleet struggled against the storm's pull. The ship's shields flickered under its energy, warning sirens screaming in every vessel. Commander Veyron stood on the command deck, his expression serious, yet there was a hint of respect in his eyes now. He had seen Daniel endure, seen him face impossible odds and succeed where even trained Sarathan failed. Lysera addressed her fleet. We will pass through this storm, not by strength alone, but by courage and unity. Follow my orders and trust in the human at my side. Whispers ran through the officers. Trust a human? Many had doubted him, but the recent trials had proven his ingenuity and resolve. Daniel moved between consoles, his hands flying over controls, rerouting power from damaged engines to shields, redirecting energy into stabilizers. Sparks danced around him, yet he did not stop. Adjust the flow to the main conduits, he shouted. Divert the secondary lines. We need more buffer. The Sarathan engineers followed, copying his improvisations. His methods were unorthodox, but effective. In moments, the ship steadied, surviving the first onslaught of the storm. From the command deck, Lysera watched. Her heart swelled with pride and awe. See, she said softly, this is the strength of humanity. Creativity, courage, and the will to act when all seems lost. Hours passed in tense silence. The storm raged around them, but the Queen's fleet, guided by Daniel's knowledge and Lysera's commands, moved with precision. Shuttles avoided energy tendrils, ships shifted in perfect coordination, and shields held under impossible strain. At one point, a lightning surge struck a nearby vessel. Daniel noticed a critical failure in its energy core. Without hesitation, he grabbed a portable toolkit, sprinted through maintenance corridors, and climbed aboard the damaged ship. The crew of that vessel looked on in astonishment. How could a human move with such skill under extreme danger? Daniel ignored their questions, working furiously to patch leaks, reroute conduits, and stabilize the core. Finally, with a final twist of a wrench, the ship hummed back to life. Daniel stumbled back to his own vessel, exhausted, yet alive. Lysera met him at the dock, her glowing eyes fixed on his face. You risked yourself for them, she said. For my people. Daniel shook his head, still catching his breath. Not just yours. Everyone's alive because we work together. Humans and Sarathan. As the storm began to dissipate, the fleet saw its first clear view of open space. The light of distant stars reflected off polished hulls, battered but intact. The officers and engineers began to breathe again, relief washing over their faces. Commander Veyron approached Daniel, his expression unreadable at first. You survived, Veyron said finally, and so did they. Your ways, they work. I see now the strength of a human mind. Daniel gave a tired smile. Guess sometimes you have to break the rules to fix the world. Veyron nodded slowly. I will not forget this, nor will my people. In the quiet of the Queen's chamber, Daniel finally allowed himself to relax. Lysera sat across from him, her hands resting lightly on the crystal table. You did more than repair machines, she said. You repaired faith. You gave hope where doubt ruled. Your actions saved not just my vessel but my fleet and perhaps my empire. Daniel shook his head. I'm just an engineer, I do what I know, but I'm glad it worked. Lysera's gaze softened. You are more than an engineer. You are human, and that is enough. Enough to stand beside me. Enough to hold the name of husband if you choose. Daniel's heart skipped. I don't know if I deserve that. Deserve? She asked, her eyes glowing brighter. Deserve is not for those who act. It is for those who hesitate. You acted, Daniel Cross. That is enough. The Sarathan crew gathered around them, some still shy, some openly proud. The whispered doubts were gone. Where once there was envy, now there was respect. Daniel realized that trust once earned could change even centuries of tradition. He looked around at the crew, then at the Queen. I never imagined any of this. Back on the mining station, life was simple. Fix a drill, repair a pump, repeat. But being here, helping you, it matters more than I can say. Lysera's lips curved in a rare, gentle smile. Then stay, Daniel. Not because of title or word, but because you choose to. And he did. Days later, the Queen's fleet repaired, the storm passed, and the cosmic horizon stretched wide. Daniel stood at the observation deck with Lysera. He looked out at the stars, feeling a sense of belonging he had never known. You know, he said quietly, I used to think humans were small in this universe. Fragile. Lysera's eyes glowed softly. And now? Now, he said with a grin, we're small, yes, but full of ideas. Courage, hope. Sometimes that is more powerful than fleets or weapons. She stepped closer, touching his arm lightly. You are more than any human I have known. You are my partner. My Kalaran, husband, if the word suits you. Daniel felt warmth spread through him. He had survived battles, storms, and the doubts of a proud empire. But standing here, hearing the words from her lips, he understood something profound. Humanity was not just about strength or machines. It was about heart, creativity, and the courage to act when all seemed lost. He nodded slowly. Then, I will be here. Beside you. Lysera's eyes reflected the distant stars. And I will stand beside you, always. Outside, the fleet sailed, forward into the unknown, stronger than before. The human engineer and the alien queen, bound by trust, courage, and choice, faced the universe together. And Daniel knew for the first time in his life that being human was not a weakness. It was a gift. Together, they looked at the stars. Together, they were unstoppable.